Some betrayals creep into your life like a slow poison, unnoticed until it's too late. Others strike like lightning, sudden, blinding, setting fire to everything you thought was real. One moment, I was a devoted husband, grabbing dinner with a colleague after a long day. The next, I was watching my marriage disintegrate before my very eyes. It was a rainy Wednesday evening. Work had been exhausting, and my coworker, Brian, suggested we grab a quick meal at an Italian place nearby. It was one of those cozy, dimly lit restaurants where the smell of garlic and fresh bread hung heavy in the air. I barely looked at the name when we walked in. I was too busy rubbing the tension from my temples, thinking about how I'd go home to Lisa, my wife of 9 years, and collapse in a bed beside her. She had texted me earlier, saying she'd be working late at the office, drowning in paperwork. And then I saw her. Lisa, not at work, not buried under a pile of documents, but sitting at a table in the corner, laughing, her hand lightly touching the wrist of the man across from her. A man who wasn't me. The world narrowed. My vision tunneled, the sounds of the restaurant fading into static. Lisa was dressed in a way she hadn't dressed for me in years. Her blouse just a little too tight, her lipstick fresh, her hair curled perfectly around her shoulders. The man she was with leaned in, his body language intimate, familiar. He smirked at something she said, and she responded by gently resting her fingers on his forearm. I felt something inside me snap. My hands clenched into fists as I stormed toward their table. Chairs scraped against the floor as other patrons turned to stare, sensing the explosion before it even happened. Lisa looked up, her face freezing in horror the moment she saw me. "Kevin," she breathed, her hand jerking away from the man's arm like she had been burned. I stared at her, then at him. He was younger than me, maybe mid-30s, his suit too crisp, his confidence the kind that came from thinking he had won something that didn't belong to him. "You lied to me," I said, my voice eerily calm. Lisa swallowed hard, glancing around as if searching for an escape. "It's not what it looks like." I let out a bitter laugh, loud enough that people at nearby tables flinched. "Oh, really? Because it looks like my wife, who said she was working late, is here, on a goddamn date, holding hands with some guy in a cheap suit." The man, her date, her affair, her mistake, finally spoke, his voice dripping with forced coolness. "Maybe you should calm down." That did it. Before I could stop myself, I grabbed the edge of the table and flipped it. Plates, glasses, and an expensive bottle of wine crashed to the floor, shattering into a chaotic mess of red and white shards. Lisa screamed, jerking back as the liquid splattered across her blouse. The restaurant erupted into gasps and murmurs, people pulling out their phones, already recording. The manager rushed over, panic in his eyes. "Sir, you need to leave." Lisa stood, her chest heaving. "Kevin, please." I reached into my wallet, pulled out a stack of bills, and threw them onto the broken dishes at her feet. "For the damage. Unlike my wife, I take responsibility for my actions." And then I turned and walked out, leaving Lisa standing there, stunned, humiliated, and drowning in the mess she had created. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. That night, I sat in the dark, my hands gripping a whiskey glass so hard I thought it might shatter. Lisa came home hours later, creeping inside like a thief, her breath hitching when she saw me waiting in the living room. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I stared at her. "How long?" She hesitated. That was answer enough. 6 months, she finally said, her voice barely audible. I laughed. A cold, hollow sound. 6 months. Half a goddamn year, Lisa. She wiped at her eyes. It wasn't serious. I slammed my glass onto the table. "Don't insult me. You don't destroy a marriage for something that isn't serious." Tears streamed down her face. "I didn't want this to happen." I stood, towering over her. "Then why did you do it?" She let out a strangled sob. "I don't know. I was lonely. You've been so distant. I felt like you didn't see me anymore." I exhaled slowly, forcing the rage back down. "So instead of talking to me, you opened your legs for someone else?" She flinched. "I love you, Kevin." I leaned in close, my voice like ice. "No, Lisa. You love attention. You love the thrill, the secrecy. You love the way he made you feel, not him." She sobbed harder, but I didn't care. I walked past her, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" she choked out. I didn't turn around. "To start planning your downfall." And then I left. The next few days were a blur of quiet, simmering rage. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I barely spoke to her. But behind the scenes, I was preparing to make her regret everything. First, I went through our accounts. Lisa had always depended on my salary more than hers. I made sure that dependence would become her biggest weakness. Then, I hired a lawyer. She cheated, I told him. I want her to get nothing. He nodded, flipping through the evidence I had gathered. With these pictures, these texts, you'll destroy her in court. But I didn't just want to win in court. I wanted to burn her life to the ground. So I made another call. To her boss. Lisa worked in PR. Image was everything. So I made sure he knew exactly what kind of person she really was. By the end of the week, Lisa came home pale, shaking. They fired me, she whispered. I sipped my coffee. That's a shame. She dropped onto the couch, head in her hands. Why are you doing this? I finally looked at her. Because I want you to suffer. Her lower lip trembled. Kevin, please. I know I hurt you, but you're destroying my entire life. I smiled. That's the idea. And for the first time since that night at the restaurant, I felt something close to peace. But I wasn't finished yet. Lisa thought losing her job was the worst thing that could happen to her. She had no idea what was coming next. Lisa thought she had hit rock bottom. She was wrong. The night after she lost her job, she tried to talk to me again. Desperate, tear-streaked, begging for a second chance. But I had already moved on to the final part of my plan. I didn't just want her to suffer. I wanted her to feel the humiliation I felt. So I sent everything, the texts, the pictures, the proof of her affair to her family. Her mother called first. Furious. Disgusted. Then her sister. Then her friends, the ones who still thought she was the perfect wife, the loyal partner. Lisa's world crumbled overnight. And then the unexpected twist. The man she cheated with? He wasn't just some guy. He was engaged. And when his fiancée saw the messages, she didn't just leave him, she exposed everything. Lisa wasn't just hated. She was famous. Her affair went viral. People shared screenshots, laughed at her downfall. She had no job, no reputation, no way out. She tried to blame me. But I just looked at her, calm, collected. Thank you for listening to the story to the end. Please like, share your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel.